Andy in the attic here. I'm back. Had a couple of weeks doing other stuff. Back to doing YouTube videos today and for the next couple of weeks. So today's video, Locus of Control. This is one of those concepts that I think ought to be much more common in everyday language, as in people understand it, and it's something that's talked about to children, especially in schools. Whether people have agency, do they have a strong internal locus of control, or do they outsource responsibility, therefore they have an external locus of control? Young people growing up, especially really since the 90s, there's been an emphasis on fulfilling every child's need. Every child matters. There is no such thing as a bad child. There's only bad behavior, etc., etc., etc. And the raising of children within culture has seen a significant change. And largely, it has revolved around the rights and entitlements of the child, rather than focusing on the duties and responsibilities. So if you go to Japan, there, most schools don't have cleaners. The children clean the school. The children are responsible for the environment in which they learn. And that is very much inside the culture, and no one thinks to question that. Whereas children in the UK, just look at how much litter gets generated. This morning I was walking the dogs in one of the parks here, and obviously it was a busy day yesterday with the weather being quite good and children being down there, and just the sheer volume of litter that are Lucasade bottles and crisp packets and sweet wrappers. It's just the whole park is covered with it, and largely they haven't been taught. Children will naturally not think to put things in the bin unless they're taught to do it. And we don't seem to do that. So duties and responsibilities. Now, when we talk rights and entitlements, that is outsourcing things externally. Duties and responsibilities are very much placing an internal locus of control. And so essentially, I'm responsible for my life. Too many people are living a life where they're saying they're not responsible, and everything in the environment is wrong. The reason why they're unhappy, the reason they self-harm, the reason they drink too much alcohol, the reason they take drugs, the reason they have promiscuous lifestyles and all the other activities of harm that people can engage in is simply because of external events. Now, what can then start to happen is as people start to draw attention to their individual characteristics as a result of the lifestyle they live, they may end up with a diagnosis. And the diagnosis is, oh, you behave this way because you have antisocial personality disorder, you have bipolar, you're on the Asperger spectrum, you have tendencies of, you have schizoaffective disorder, very popular, rising up the ranks in terms of popularity in the charts at the moment. And so now the explanation is one of diagnosis. It's not one of individual responsibility. And this is something that I saw when I worked in mental health as well. The instruction in how to take responsibility for one's life is outsourced to medication. And that it's almost like it would be oppressive to suggest to people that they can be more in charge of their lives, because apparently they can't help the way they are, and therefore they have to be drugged. Because once we medicalize a disorder, no one is responsible anymore, because essentially we rely on the drugs to do the job. And then, of course, we can hate the drug companies because we outsource responsibility for everything. So it's all a big conspiracy, big pharma, not really trying to make cures. They try and keep people ill because they make more money that way. So everything becomes an external locus of control. And for so many people, they're surrounded by that being reinforced. They never actually get to go, okay, I'm going to be responsible for my life. How can I do that? Who's going to facilitate that for me? Who's going to help me take more control of my life? Then you have, from the neoconservative, the alt-right side of thinking, you have individuals such as Jordan Peterson come along, who suggest, well, maybe people can take more responsibility for their lives. And then a hate campaign is unleashed against them by the people who have very much been raised within the mindset of everything is outsourced. So locus of control is more than just how do you make excuses for your failings? Do you blame yourself, or do you blame external events or external factors? It's more than that. It can be chunked up to a social, cultural and huge environmental level where populations can move with this. It becomes a political movement of people. In left-wing liberal stuff, I'm probably going to get hate for this, I know. But generally, people are fine The left-wing agenda suggests that when we fix society, when we fix the environment, when people aren't so oppressed and kept down, when greater equity and opportunities are presented to people, people will do well. And there's a lot of merit to that. The social constructive theory of mental health suggests that people are made ill by their lifestyle, their environment, by the social pressures upon them, by the influence of advertising, the influence of generational stuff being passed down through the language, and so on. There's a lot of merit to that. Now, right at the other end, on the right-wing end of stuff, it's basically, you're responsible for your life, and if you're not doing well, screw you. We're not going to help you. You need to fix it yourself. Poor people are to blame for their poverty. Disadvantaged people, they're just lazy. Now, there's merits to that as well, because both camps can find plenty of examples to reinforce that view. And neither is right 100% of the time, and neither is wrong 100% of the time, no matter how much the polarization, they each look at the other. But more liberal thinkers tend to outsource responsibility, so external factors are to blame. More conservative thinkers are much more likely to blame the individual and hold individual accountability, duties and responsibilities, which is why they're much more rule-orientated to the individual, whereas left-wing, much more rule-orientated to the environment and to the populace at large. And never the twain shall meet. There's a constant tension between those two camps. But on an individual level, it's worth paying attention to where do you outsource responsibility when actually you could do something about that yourself. Easy example for me, I picked up a Lucozade bottle this morning and put it in the bin. Why? Because it was nearest the bin and I wasn't going to go and clear the whole park. I just thought I would do my one little thing. Now, of course, I could have cleared up the park, but I've got things to do. And there are actually people paid to do that as well, and no doubt by lunchtime today that park will be clear. Only it's been made a mess of this afternoon. Why should I do it? There's people paid for that. However, if I now tut and blame society, blame the kids, blame parents today, blame all of those things, I'm essentially outsourcing all the responsibility. Well, what do I do to contribute towards that? Now, if I have for example, a drink problem, a drug problem, I have habits I don't like. We're very good at outsourcing responsibility. Well, I can't help it, I'm a Sagittarius. Well, I was a cesarean birth. Well, I had a terrible childhood. I never got role models as a child. There's lots of excuses that people can do to outsource the responsibility. But whether you have agency or not, so whether you're in charge or you're assigning agency out externally, essentially, do you have an internal locus of control, external locus of control? Pay attention to how you structure that and how does that influence how you live your life and where could you make changes. As always, I'm always interested in other people's views on this. If the Conservatives want to give me a hard time for being a left-wing cuck, if the Liberals want to give me a hard time for being alt-right fascist, comment section, and interaction's an interaction. It all helps on the YouTube channel. Do click the like button though, that's great. Thank you.